3 men on the
your
floor.
feet. Push-up
52
position now.
seconds. That's all it took.
Give me
For 4
10.
weeks, they called him weak. They said
can't
he
stay
couldn't
here.
speak right. Said he didn't belong.
Time
They
to move
circled
on.
him in the dark, laughed on camera, built a case out of lies and a borrowed MRI and 5 years of stolen valor. He documented everything. He said nothing. He waited. And when one of them finally grabbed his wrist in front of 200 witnesses and 40 fun slam people watching live, he didn't fight back. He didn't have to. Because the man they spent 4 weeks trying to
We
break
have a
had
serious
already
problem.
survived something they couldn't
It's worse
imagine.
than we thought.
This is what
We
looks
need to
like when
act
it's ready.
now.
The gym was silent, not quiet. Silent. The kind of silent that only happens after something has gone one way and cannot go another. 3 men were on the floor. One clutching his shoulder, one curled around his knee like he'd forgotten how to be a person. One crying into his sleeve in a way that suggested he had never once considered this as a possible Saturday. And in the middle of all of it, one man standing, not breathing hard, not looking around, not saying a word. He just stood there, like he had always been standing there, like the floor was his and always had been, and the other 3 had simply not received the information yet. Then he turned around and walked away. 3 weeks earlier, Cole Riker woke up at 5:47 because his body had stopped pretending sleep was going to continue. Not nightmares, not anymore, just the ceiling. The sick water stain above the left corner of the bed that he had memorized so completely he could have drawn it in the dark. The crack that ran from the light fixture toward the window and stopped 2 inches short of the frame like it had thought better of the whole enterprise. He swung his legs over the side, sat in the half-dark, hands on his knees, 1-bedroom apartment, Aurora, Colorado, 3rd floor, the kind of building where the laundry room was always as occupied by someone else's clothes, and the parking lot had one functioning light, and the woman in 3B played gospel music at 6 every morning, and nobody complained, because honestly it was the best sound on the block. 1 chair at the kitchen table, not because he was expecting company, because he wasn't. 3 shirts in the closet, 2 pairs of pants, 1 pair of boots that still held the shape of someone's who used to move with more certainty than he currently had available to him. And under the bed, a metal box, locked, face down against the floor. Like if he couldn't see the front of it, maybe it couldn't see him either. He'd been telling himself that for 11 months, and the box had yet to confirm or deny whether the logic held. He left it alone. Same as every morning. The kitchen drawer next to the refrigerator had 3 letters in it, all folded the same way, all from different employers, all containing variations of the same sentence. After careful consideration, at this time, wish to wish you well. He didn't open the drawer. He made coffee, black, stood at the window while it brewed and watched Aurora do its slow Tuesday thing. A kid on a bike taking the corner too fast. A woman walking a dog that decided walking was optional and was making this known. A man in a postal uniform starting his truck, stopping, starting it again, normal, unhurried. A morning that had nothing in particular to do with Cole Riker. His phone buzzed at 8:12. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer. He answered, "Mr. Riker," a man's voice, deliberate. "This is Frank Navarro. I own Apex Combat Academy on Colfax. I was given your name by someone I trust. I have an opening. Self-defense offense instructions, Tuesday and Thursday evenings." Cole was quiet for a moment. "I'll take it." A pause on the other end. Like Frank had prepared for negotiation and was recalibrating. "You don't want to know the rate? I'll take it. A beat. 1 condition. Nobody here needs to know what I did before." Frank went quiet for 2 full seconds. "I've read your file," he said. "The parts I was allowed to read." Another pause. "I understand." Cole hung up, stood at the window another minute. Watched postal truck find its way out of the parking lot. What he didn't say to Frank Navarro, what he hadn't said to anyone, was that he needed this job the way a drowning man spunked them something solid. Not for the money. Money was nearly beside the point at this stage. He needed it because, without a purpose, the apartment was just a room. The room was just 4 walls, and 4 walls had been feeling less like shelter and more like a verdict. He needed to be useful. That was the whole of it. He needed to be useful again. He put the phone down, looked at the ceiling for a moment, then went to find his good polo shirt. Apex Academy occupied a corner of Colfax Avenue, like it was making an argument. Glass front, steel framing, a logo designed by someone who understood that certain men would pay a premium to see themselves reflected in sharp angles. $800 a month, and what you received for that was access to the mats, the equipment, the programming, and the very particular feeling of being the kind of person who paid $800 a month for mats, equipment, and programming. Cole stood outside it for 40 seconds on his first morning, read the lettering on the door, watched the people moving behind the glass, took a breath, went in. The woman at the front desk gave him a badge, instructor, nothing else. He'd asked for that specifically when Frank arranged the paperwork. She'd looked at him like it was an unusual request. He hadn't explained he found the locker room, changed into the black polo. No insignia, no name, no history attached to the fabric. Tied his hair back, checked his watch, looked at himself in the mirror for 1 second, then walked out, made it 12 feet. Hey. The bistro voice came his left, big, trained to fill a room without apparent effort. The kind of voice that had spent years learning to make other people feel like they were taking up too much space just by existing in its vicinity. Damon Holt was 28 years old and had the build of someone who had made a years-long project of his own body. 6 feet of disciplined muscle and easy confidence and custom athletic wear that probably ran more per piece than Cole's monthly grocery budget. He had the kind of face that was used to being the face in the room. Symmetrical, settled into itself, the kind of face that appeared on promotional materials, which was accurate because his face appeared on promotional materials. Every column in gym had one. Damon mid-kick. Damon applying a choke with clean technique and a cleaner jawline. Damon in various states of controlled dominance, always looking directly at the camera like it had said slightly out of line, and he was choosing magnanimously to let it go. You're the new instructor? Cole looked at him, yes, for Damon glanced to his right. The glance itself was a performance, night class, that look, 2 seconds sideways. Cole registered it, filed it away. The man to Dame's right was Bryce Callum, 26. Already holding his phone at the horizontal angle that meant he was recording. He had the alert, slightly detached quality of someone who accepts every situation as potential content first and actual human event second. Quick eyes, fast smile, the kind of person who filmed strangers in difficult moments and thought that sharing them was a form of connection. Behind both of them, leaning against the wall with his arms crossed, was Garrett Wynn, 30 years old. The particular ease of a man who had grown up in rooms where his presence was accommodated without question. Expensive clothes worn in the way that signals expense rather than hiding it. He looked at Cole the way people look at something that has materialized in their space uninvited, and they haven't decided yet how to make it leave. Cole looked at all three of them. 1 second. 2. Excuse me, he said. He walked forward. Damon stepped to the side, not from courtesy, from choice. The distinction was in the body language. He was allowing Cole pass, establishing that this was his decision. Cole was moving because Damon had decided to permit it. Cole walked past without acknowledging the framing. Behind him, he heard Bryce say something low, heard Damon respond, heard Garrett make a sound that lived in the neighborhood of contempt. He kept walking, found the desk mat, set his bag down, stood in the empty space, and let the quiet of it settle around him for a moment. Then he took out his phone. 1 contact, starred. No name stored, just a number he had memorized well enough to dial in completeness if it came to that. He typed 1 message, day 1. Started. The reply arrived in 9 seconds. Document everything. Judith Mercer had been in his phone for 4 years. Veterans Rights Division. He'd put her number in there the same week he separated, the same week the silence in whatever room he was in first started feeling like something other than peace. He had never called her, not once in 4 years, just kept the number the way you keep a spare key in a drawer. The key is not a plan, it's just a key. He put the phone away, started pulling crash pads off the rack. Here was what nobody in this building understood yet. The man quietly setting equipment on the side mat had picked up his phone before he ever walked through the front door, had already started a file, was already counting. They thought he was the unknown quantity. He was the one taking notes. The first student arrived 7 minutes early. Carol Emmons was 52 years old, and she moved through the door of the side mat the way people move when they've spent a long time making themselves smaller than they are. Careful, contained. Long sleeves pushed down past her wrists on an August morning when the air conditioning in Apex was working hard and not quite winning. The bruises under those sleeves were healing. He knew that because he'd read her intake form. He knew it because she'd written one sentence in the additional notes section. I just want to stop being afraid inside my own body. One line, that was her entire ask. Cole crossed the mat when he saw her. He didn't extend his hand right away, didn't go into introductions. He just walked over, and when he reached her, he crouched down, eye level. Not presenting himself from above, just there, he put his hand on her shoulder. Once, brief, light. Carol Emmons exhaled, the kind of exhale that has been waiting at the end of a very long-held breath. The kind that tells you the breath has been held for considerably more than a year. "Thank you for coming," Cole said. His voice scraped the words at the edges and landed them clear in the middle. She looked at him the way people look at someone when they're deciding if the words mean what they sound like. They meant what they sounded like. She nodded, found a spot on the mat. 7 more came in over the next 10 minutes. 8 total, different ages, different specifics, different shapes that fear had taken in each of their lives. But Carol first, always Carol first, standing on the mat with her long sleeves and her one-line ask. Cole stood at the front of the dipping mat, arms loose. "Tonight," he said, how to break a wrist grip. He let that sit for a moment, because the first thing a bad man does is grab you, and the first thing you do is leave. Across the gym on the main mat, Dame Holt was watching. Cole didn't look at him. He didn't need to. The first real provocation came on Tuesday of the Sejkwick, so Cole was positioning crash pads along the edges of the mat when he heard Dame's voice start carrying from across the floor. Not raised, just projected, designed to be heard by everyone in a specific radius without appearing to be designed that way. Over here, we have our community wellness program. A pause built for effect. We try to back, therapy mat stuff. You know how it is. Coles kept setting up pads. Damon was walking a man in a navy blazer through the space, potential sponsor. The blazer had the look of someone who wrote checks to things in exchange for having their association acknowledged. They walked closer. Cole was crouching to position a pad when something moved under his hands. The pad slid sideways, hit his shin. He straightened. The pad was 3 feet from where he'd placed it. Damon's foot was returning to its neutral position with the unhurried ease of someone who had absolutely not just kicked that. Whoops, easy smile at the blazer man. Then at Cole. "You good? That's not real training happening over here, is it? More like a gesture toward the group of women. Emotional support, right? The soft stuff." He laughed. The blazer man laughed. Briefly, Cole picked up the pad, walked back, set it, exactly the same spot it had been, then turned it to his 8 women. Wrist grip. From the front. Watch my hips. The blazer man was not laughing anymore. He looked at Damon. Damon had a smile maintained on his face with the kind of structural effort that smiles require when their original purpose has changed. He steered the blazer man away. That night, Bryce posted the clip, 19,000 views in 12 hours. Caption: "New instructor at Apex. The changes has built him around properly." Bull Cole found it at 11:15. Read the caption. Open his Notice app. The witness cow added the timestamp app at the app and his the exact words to the physical contact with the equipment. Put the phone down. Stared at the ceiling for a while. Thought about the box under the bed. Left it there. The second incident was worse. Not because of what happened to Cole. Because of who it happened in front of end of the first week. Cole was running Carol through the wrist release mechanics for the 3rd time when he heard shoes stop at the edge of the mat. Garrett Witten. 2 men beside him that Cole didn't recognize. Both had the groomed, evaluative look of people who were being shown something they might fund. Garrett pointed. "Look at that arm." Cole's sleeve had ridden up. 3 inches of scars visible above the wrist. The burn tissue caught the overhead lighting the way it always did. Hard and ridged and darker than the skin around it, running up the inner forearm toward the elbow. Garrett walked closer, still performing outward. BBQ accident? A tilt of the head. Or did someone finally run out of patience with you? He turned to his associates. Both men had gone very still in the way men go still when they're deciding whether they're obligated to say something. This is what we've got running a class here. Damaged goods instructing. He gestured at the group on the mat. Well, you know what they say about that. One of the associates looked toward the floor, the kind of not looking that functions as its own response. Carol was on her feet. Cole's hand found her shoulder before she had her weight fully under her, while intact. He didn't push her back down, just made it. She sat. Cole faced Garrett. He didn't raise his voice, didn't step toward him. He pulled his sleeve down, slowly, the way you close a door that somebody opened without asking, and he held Garrett Wynn's eyes. Held them past the point where holding them required something from Garrett, past the point where the grin could maintain itself on its own. Garrett's expression did a small amount of structural work to stay in place. Then he left. Cole turned back to his class. "One more time," he said. "Hips, not the hand. After class, after everyone else had gone, Cora stayed and folded mats without being asked. They worked it without speaking. The gym noise filtered in from the main floor. You okay?" she said, eventually. He nodded. A moment. "He sounded like my ex-husband," she said. Cole set down what he was holding. Sat down on the edge of the mat, right there on the floor. Not saying anything comforting because he didn't have the right words assembled, and he knew it. Just sat there. Present. Breathing in and out in the cooling gym while Carol's shoulders did the things shoulders do when they've been holding something up for too long, and Anne finally received permission to rest. She didn't cry. She didn't need to. She just needed someone to stay. He stayed the first Thursday. Damon brought 5 men in suits through the side mat. He did not need to come through the side mat. The main floor was directly accessible from the hall. The route he chose added 40 feet to the walk. He chose it. Short detour, gentlemen. Sorry about that. He indicated the space with the open-handed generosity of presenting something he owned. Community outreach class, our instructor. A beat, just enough. Doesn't really speak. Vocal injury, they say. The word they landing with a certain implication. Imagine running a martial arts class and not being able to use your voice properly. 2 of the suits made polite murmuring sounds. 3 of them didn't. Carol stood. He teaches better than you ever will. The suits went quiet in a room that was already quiet. Damon turned, smile intact. "Sweetheart, sit down before you embarrass yourself." "Sweetheart yourself." Carol's chin was up. "I taught elementary school for 23 years. I have seen every version of this." She looked at him directly. "I know exactly what you are." The smile cracked. 1/2 second. Damon pulled it back, ushered the suits forward, moved them on. One of the men, older, gray at the temples, paused as he passed. He didn't look at the equipment or the class or the promotional images on the wall. He looked at Cole, held that look for a beat that was 1 beat too long to be accidental. Then he went. Cole filed the face. Gray hair, Marine Corps pin inside lapel barely visible. Hands that had done outdoor work for a long time. The particular stillness of someone who already knows the answer to most of the questions in the room. After class, Carol apologized for speaking out without being asked. Cole went to the whiteboard, picked up the marker. Never apologize for truth. Carol read it, nodded once, picked up her bag, and went home. Cole was running 2 files simultaneously. One on his phone, timestamped, factual. Date, time, location, wit count, exact language as close as memory allowed, type of physical contact, if any, documentation status of each incident. One in his head, less factual, more structural. The pattern he was mapping was this. Damon Holt's entire identity lived inside a room he controlled. The gym was his room. The schedules was his room. The social architecture of every interaction on those mats was his. When something appeared in his room that he didn't control, the response wasn't curiosity. It was elimination. Cole was something Damon couldn't eliminate. Because Frank had hired Cole. Frank owned the room, and the legal exposure of wrongful termination without documented cause was a number large enough that even Damon's confidence wasn't sufficient collateral against it. So instead of removing Cole, Damon was going to make Cole remove himself. Cole recognized it, seen had versions of this dynamic before, knew the escalation arc, knew where the pressure was designed to land and why, and he was not going to leave, not out of stubbornness, not out of pride. Those were available options, but they weren't the reason. Carol, that was the reason. The 7 other women who showed up twice a week and practiced saying no with their bodies, who were learning, one technique at a time, that their fear had edges, that it wasn't infinite, that it had a shape and shapes could be worked with. He was not leaving. Here was the thing about Gunny Ray Tatum. Cole didn't know his name yet. He just knew the face. The gray hair and weathered hands, and the pin on the inside lapel that was almost invisible under the fold of the collar. The man who had stopped outside the side mat door during a sponsor tour. And looking whole, though you look at someone you already know in a context you weren't expecting. That had been the first Thursday, and Cole had filed the face the way he filed everything. Precisely. without assignment. What Cole didn't know, what he had no way of knowing, was that 6 months before Frank Navarro called him, a phone call had taken place in a parking garage in Denver. Frank had been sitting in his car after a long day when his phone rang. A number he didn't recognize, he answered. The man on the other end identified himself as Ray Tatum. Said he was retired Corps, 28 years. Said he had been watching Apex for several months from the outside, watching the complaint patterns, watching the turnover in Damon's classes, watching what happened when students raised concerns about injury or conduct, and students' concerns were not met with what they deserved. Frank had listened. Then Tatum said he knew someone. Someone with a specific background and a specific kind of patience and a specific set of skills that would be immediately useful to a women's self-defense program and might also be, given time, useful in a different and larger way. He sent Frank a file. Frank read it, the unclassified parts, read it twice. Called Cole the next morning. And Tatum had been present since, not visibly, peripherally. Attending the events that Apex hosted, embedded in the groups, Frank moved through the facility, watching, waiting for the sequence to begin moving the way he expected it to move. On the first Thursday, when the sponsor tour passed the side mat, Tatum had looked at Cole through the doorway for 3 seconds. Cole had filed the face. That night, Tatum called Frank from his hotel room. He holding up? Better than holding up, Frank said. Good. A pause. Let it go where it's going. Don't interfere with it. He hung up. Frank sat in his office for a while after that call and looked at promotional images of Damon Holt on the walls of his gym and thought about all the things he had been telling himself for the last 4 years, and how long it takes a person to run out of reasons to keep telling themselves those things. He didn't have an answer yet, but he was getting close to one the third week, Friday morning. Cole arrived at 6:15, one lamp on at the reception desk, the chemical, clean smell of mopped floors, the particular quiet of a space that hadn't filled yet with everything it would hold later. He heard voices from the protein bar area before he was visible from it. He slowed. Damon, easy to identify, built for carrying across distance. City diversity contract. That's all this is. Frank needed the grant money, and the grant had tursked, and one of those strings was Cole. A shake of a blender bottle, ice and powder. You think he'd have brought in some guy who can barely talk to run arts and crafts in the corner of my floor if there wasn't money on the line. Bryce made a sound. Agreement. Place used to mean something, Damon said. Standards. Now we've got a burned-up mute in the corner teaching middle-aged women how to feel better about themselves. Cole was standing in the doorway. He didn't know the precise moment he had stopped walking. Just that motion had ceased, and he was standing still with the door frame 2 inches to his right. Bryce saw him first. Bryce's face did several things in quick succession. None of them were comfortable. Damon looked at Cole, did not recalibrate, not 1 millimeter of flinch. He raised his shake in a slow, deliberate arc. A toast. Morning instructor. Comfortable. Practiced. Eavesdropping is a bad habit. Cole looked at him, held it for 3 full seconds. Long enough that Bryce's phone, already in his hand but not yet raised, remained in an ambiguous position between filming and not filming. Then Cole walked past both of them, found the side mat, set his bag down, sat. 30 seconds. His right hand was on his knee. He watched the fist form, watched the knuckles go white, the blood leaving the skin, the joints closing down. Then he opened the hand. Flat, palm down onto his knee. That was the only time in 23 days that his body did something without being asked first. The fist, 30 seconds, then an open hand. That was all he allowed. He stood up, went to the equipment cart, but started placing cones. That night he texted Judith, need to move the timeline up. Her response came inside a minute. How much time do you need? He thought about Carol, about the 7 others. About the file he had been building and the count he had been keeping, and how many more incidents he needed before the picture was complete enough to be undeniable. 2 weeks, he typed. Immediate response. We're ready when you are. He put the phone face down on the nightstand, looked at the ceiling, thought about the box, thought about what was inside it. The soldier's medal in its case, face down, the photograph, the folded flag. The paperwork from the Army that described in official language what had happened in a Nevada desert on a specific afternoon and what Cole had done in response to it, and what the United States government thought that response was worth in terms of formal recognition. He had turned the metal face down the day he came home. Had not turned it over since. 2 more weeks, he said to the ceiling. The ceiling didn't argue. Here is what Damon Holt did not know. He did not know that Cole Riker, in a training exercise gone catastrophically wrong in the Nevada desert 4 years ago, had sentenced next to a convoy vehicle when it hit an ordnance device during a live fire scenario that was supposed to be controlled and was not, that the vehicle had caught, that 2 men did not get out, that 3 others were inside when the fire reached the fuel system timeline that made getting them out of seconds that were already. He did not know that Cole had gone back in, twice, with his own clothes on fire, with shrapnel already in his throat, doing the permanent work that left him with a voice that scraped the edges of every word it touched. He had gone back in and come back out with vocal, and had not stopped until the vehicle stopped being a place where people could be. He did not know about the soldier's medal, or the Purple Heart, or the photograph in the metal box under the bed of 3 men with smoke behind them and alive expressions on their faces, 2 of whom sent collages on occasion that he sometimes read and sometimes did not but always kept. He did not know about Judith Mercer. He did not about Gunperney Tatum. He did not know about the file or the timestamps or the notes app with its careful, factual, precisely dated entries. He knew one thing about Cole Riker. He knew that Cole wouldn't fight back. He was correct about that. He was profoundly wrong about why. Cole wasn't holding back because he couldn't. He was holding back because he had made a decision, because Judith had said, give them rope. Because Tatum had said, let it go where it's going. Because Cole had been in enough situations to understand the difference between a reaction and a result. He wasn't avoiding the fight. He was aiming. And the difference between a reaction and a result is patience and time, and knowing exactly how long to hold still before you move. In the parking lot outside Apex on Thursday Day evening, Carol Emmons hugged Cole when she left, held on for a moment longer than the hug required, then let go and walked to her car. Cole stood in the lot until her taillights turned the corner. Then he looked up at the second-floor windows, where the light was on, where Damon was probably still there, where Bryce's phone was probably still ready. He looked at those windows for exactly 1 second, got in his car, drove home. 2 more weeks, the box under the bed would keep. And at the end of the wait, someone in that building was going to find out what Cole Riker looked like when he finally decided the time was right. But that part comes later. Sarah Finch was 19 years old, and she sat down on the floor in the doorway of the side mat like her legs had filed a complaint. Her brain hadn't processed yet. Right arm in a sling, not the decorative kind. The kind that exists because something inside the shoulder had traveled in a direction shoulders don't go, and the body was still in the early stages of deciding what to do about that. She didn't make it to the mat, just stopped at the threshold, and sat down on the floor like the threshold was as far as the situation allowed. Cole was mid-sentence when he saw her. Teaching Carol the multitudes of the hip pivot, he stopped, crossed the room, got down beside her, not in front, beside, same tile, same level. Enough space between them that closing it was her choice, not his. She was crying, not the kind that announces itself. The quiet kind, the kind with nowhere particular to go. What happened? Cole said, not a question. The form of a question, without the function of one. The way you say something when you already need to brace for what's coming. He did it on purpose. Her voice was almost not there. I asked him to slow down. I asked 3 times. He didn't. She swallowed. I heard the pop. I felt it go. And then a breath that didn't quite complete itself. He looked at Bryce's camera and laughed. Damon. Cole didn't say the name. He didn't need to, and neither did she. Bryce posted it the same night, Sarah said. She held her phone out. Screen already pulled up, already loaded. 15 seconds of video. Cole watched it without taking the phone from her hand. Sarah on the main mat, Damon above her in full control of the position. The shoulder lock. Any trained eye would read the angle in under 2 seconds. The exact degree past the safety threshold that separated instruction from intent. Sarah's voice going high and sharp. Damon's face not toward her, toward the camera, grinning at it like it was an audience he was performing for, because it was. 300,000 views. The caption. College girl thinks belongs with the big dogs. Cole straightened up, didn't speak for a moment. Let the clip finish where it finished. My parents can't afford a lawyer. Sarah pulled at a thread on the edge of her sleeve. Navarro told me it was an accident and I rest the shoulder. If I report Damon to the Federation, the Scholarship Review Board gets flagged. My housing stipend gets reviewed. I lose everything I came here with. She looked up at him. Her eyes were red at the outer edges. I'm not going to be okay, 5 words, 19 years old. Sitting on a floor because the floor was as far as she could get. Coco held her gaze for a long moment. Not past her, not through her, at her. The way you look at someone when you want them to know that the looking is intentional. Something moved across his face. Not anger, not yet. Anger moved too fast, burned without directions. What he felt was something older and colder. The particular internal temperature of a person who has already done the calculation and arrived at a number that will not be revised. He stood up, walked to the whiteboard at the side of the mat, picked up the marker, wrote 4 words, turned the board toward her. You are Sarah Reddit, looked up at him. Something shifted in her expression. Not relief, not yet, but the beginning of the possibility of it. He met her eyes and let the sentence mean everything it meant. That night he sent Judith one message. Bring everything. Saturday is the day. Her response came back in under 5 minutes. Understood. I'll be in position before the doors open. He put the phone down, sat at his kitchen table in the quiet of the apartment, and looked at his hands for a while. The right one. The scored forearm resting on the table surface. Scar tissue reflecting the overhead light in a way that healthy skin doesn't. He opened his notes app. New entry. Timestamp. Slowed what Sarah had told him, her exact words as close as he could render them. The clip details, the caption, the view count, the shoulder, the laugh, and where Damon had been looking when he laughed. At the bottom of the entry, he added one line. She was 19 years old, and she sat on a floor because it was as far as she could get. He closed the app, sat with it for another minute, then started thinking about Saturday. Owen Stiss had been sex instructor at Apex for 4 years. He was 36 years old, and he had that kind of face that didn't photograph particularly well, which suited him because he had no interest in being photographed. He scheduled the classes, managed the equipment inventory, handled the student complaints that came directly, and those that came to sideways through the parking lot conversations that happened after classes when students thought they were speaking privately and didn't realize that the second instructor's car was 2 rows over and sound traveled in that lot on still evening. He covered for Damon when Damon was late. He reorganized the storage room when Damon decided the storage room needed reorganizing. He absorbed the administrative friction that kept the gym running while Damon's name and face absorbed the credit. He did all of this because Damon controlled the schedule, and the schedule controlled Owen's income. And Owen had a lease and a car payment, and a mother in assisted living in Fort Collins, whose monthly costs did not pause while Owen located alternative employment. So he watched. And he stayed quiet. And he felt the things people tell themselves when they see something clearly and choose not to see it. But he had also done something else. 18 months ago, after a student named Paula had come to him with a bruised rib and a story that Damon's account had painted over like a second coat of white on a damaged wall, Owen had gone home and opened a new notebook, black cover, spiral bound, small enough to fit in a jacket pocket. He'd put it in the bottom drawer of his office desk under a stack of liability waivers, and he'd started writing. Not because he had a plan. He had no plan. He wrote because somebody needed to remember, even if the somebody was only him, writing alone with no audience and no destination for the information's put. Date, time, name, what happened. Exact language where he had it. Each incident he witnessed directly, every story that came to him through the parking lot conversations, every complaint that arrived at his desk and was handled in the way Damon's interests required it to be handled rather than the way the student deserved. 18 months. Every entry dated, every name recorded. The second Friday of Cole's second week. Owen arrived at 6 in the morning. The main floor was dark except for the single reception lamp, the particular quiet space waiting to become something. He walked toward his office, stopped. Cole was on the side mat, alone, setting up the morning equipment with the focused economy of someone whose hands knew their work coat without needing to think about it. Cones in a measured line, crash pads at the correct intervals. Owen watched him for a moment, made a decision he hadn't known he was going to make until he made it. He went to his desk, opened the bottom drawer, lifted the stack of waivers, took out the black notebook, walked back to the side mat. Cole looked up when he heard footsteps. His expression stayed neutral, not closed, just present, waiting without expectation either direction. Owen didn't speak. He walked to the edge of the mat, set the notebook down on the corner, and turned around and walked back to his office without a word. Cole looked at the notebook, picked it up, opened it. He read for 11 minutes, standing in the same spot, not moving. The only thing moving was his eyes, traveling down entry after entry with the careful attention of someone reading something that requires precision to understand correctly. Paula and her rib and the way Damon's version of events had been presented to the insurance contact as the authoritative account. A man named Terrence, who had come in asking about the facility's injury reporting protocol and left without receiving a straight answer. A woman named Diane, who had complained about the grip pressure used during a private lesson, and whose complaint had been filed in the drawer where Owen kept things that were not going to be acted on. Pattern after pattern after pattern. 18 months of them, dated and specific. Cole closed the notebook, held it in both hands for a moment, looked at the office door where Owen had gone, put the notebook in his bag. That afternoon, he photographed the first 3 pages and sent them to Judith. She called back in under 2 minutes. Where did this come from? Her voice had the quality it got when she found structural material in a case. Focused, precise, the opposite of excited. Someone who's been keeping count longer than I have. A pause. Does he understand what he's handed over? I think that's exactly why he handed it over. Another pause, longer. I need the original. Keep it on your person, and I need a signed statement from him before Saturday. Written, dated, witnessed. I'll talk to him. Tell him what it means legally before you ask. Let him make an informed decision. Cole looked across the empty gym at Owen's closed office door. Judith, he said. Yes. How does this change the case? She was quiet for 3 seconds, the specific silence of someone measuring their words against what they know. It changes the scale, she said. It takes this from a single incident with a specific set of witnesses to a documented pattern of conduct over 18 months. It corroborates Sarah. It corroborates the parking lot incident. It gives context to everything your camera has been recording. A pause. It means that on Saturday, whatever they do, it won't look like one bad day. It'll look like what it is. Cole nodded at the phone, even though she couldn't see it. Saturday, he said. Saturday, she confirmed. The Friday morning incident happened on the way to being nothing. Cole resobbed at 6, went direct to the side mat, past the protein bar area on his way. Normal, routine. Except 2 voices from the protein bar. 6 in the morning in a mostly empty building carries sound differently than 6 in the evening when noise fills in all the available space. Damon's voice, built to carry, told you from the start. Quota higher, City of Surcity money. Frank needed the grant, and the grant had conditions. The sound of ice hitting the bottom of a shaker. You genuinely think he'd have brought in some half-mute with a burned arm if there was any other way to keep the community partnership funding. Bryce's laugh, short, confirming. This place had a standard, Damon said. Now we've got a guy who can barely get a sentence out running a feelings class in the corner of my floor. Cole had stopped moving. He didn't know precisely when. Just that at some point between the doorway and the side mat, his feet had stopped. Bryce saw him first. Bryce's face moved through several expressions in rapid sequence, and none of them were comfortable. Damon turned, looked at Cole, and here was the thing about Damon that Cole had been observing and cataloging for 3 weeks now. He didn't adjust when he was caught. Not 1 millimeter of recalibration. Most people, when they find that someone overheard something they said in what they believed was privacy, experience at minimum a flicker, a moment of involuntary reassessment. Damon didn't flicker. He raised his shake in a slow arc. Morning, instructor, comfortable, practiced. Eavesdropping is a bad habit, man. Cole looked at him, looked at Bryce, walked past both of them without a word, found the side mat, set his bag down, sat on the crash pad in the empty room. 30 seconds. His right fist was on his knee. He watched his own knuckles go white, watched the blood leave the joints, watched the hand close around something that wasn't there. Then he opened it, flat, palm down, that was all. The only 30 seconds in 23 days. He stood up, found the equipment cart, set a second cone. He texted Judith that night. 1 sentence. I need to move the timeline up. She responded in under a minute. How much time? He thought about the count, about what he had and what he still needed. About Carol and the 7 others and Owen's notebook and Sarah's shoulder and what Saturday needed to look like to be what it had to be. 2 weeks, he typed. Immediate. We're ready when you are. He put the phone on the nightstand, looked at the ceiling, thought about the box. Not tonight, not yet. But the distance between now and the night he would open it was measurable in days and getting shorter. 2 more weeks. The camera arrived on a Tuesday. Plain brown packaging, his name in block letters. He opened it at the kitchen table before he left for the gym, took out the device, held it in his palm, black casing, clip mount on the reverse, about the size of a large coat button. Judith had spent 2 days on the specifications, legal in Colorado for single-party recorded conversations, directional audio, 14 hours of battery at full resolution. He clipped it under his instructor patch, checked the angle in the bathroom mirror. The patch covered it entirely, no visible edge, no unusual profile. He drove to Apex, walked in, changed, walked to the side mat. He didn't feel different. He had expected some heightened awareness, some physical consciousness of the device. There was none. Just another Tuesday morning at a gym on Colfax Avenue. Same floor, same equipment. Same 8 women who came because they had decided they were done being danced. The only difference. Everything said within a of that was going somewhere it couldn't be taken back from. He taught the morning class, ran an afternoon session, spoke briefly with Owen about the following week's calendar. Owen had signed stakes the day before in Judith's office with a notary present. He had read the document twice before signing. He had not hesitated. At session that evening, Sarah Finch appeared at the side mat door. Cole had texted her that morning, asked her to come by after 7, told her there was something he needed to ask her. She arrived at 7:10, stood at the edge of the mat while the last of the evening's students gathered their things and filtered out. When the room was clear, Cole sat down on the crash pad and looked at her. I need to know if you're willing to be a formal witness, he said, not informally, on record. With my attorney present. Signed statement, your name attached to what happened. Sarah looked at him. The sling was off today. The shoulder still carried its damage carefully, held with awareness of something that remembered pain, and wasn't certain the memory was finished. What does that mean for me? She said. It means your name is part of this. It means you'll be questioned. It means saying out loud in front of people what he did to you and why it wasn't an accident. He held her gaze, and it means you won't be doing any of it alone. She sat down across from him. What do you have? She said. Time-smented footage from the camera I've been wearing since Tuesday. A notebook from another instructor with 18 months documented incidents. Your name is in that notebook. What happened to your shoulder is described by someone who was there. He didn't look away from her. And I have 4 weeks of my own records. Every incident, every word, every witness present. Sarah was quiet.
Then she said, he sent me a message.
Cole went still. She pulled out her phone, messages, turned the screen toward him. The message had come from a blocked number, 2:13 in the morning 3 nights ago. Tell your lawyer the shoulder was your own negligence, that you pushed past your limits in a drill and got hurt doing it. Or the rest of the footage from that training session goes somewhere that isn't YouTube. Cole read it twice, winked, handed the phone back. He said nothing for 6 seconds. Because there were things alive in him during those 6 seconds that had nowhere productive to go right now. That would only become evidence of the wrong thing if he'd let them move. He held them exactly where they were. Screenshot it, he said. The number, the timestamp, every version. Send all of it to this number tonight. He wrote Judith's contact on the edge of a notepad and passed it across. Don't wait. Is this going to help or hurt? Sarah said. What Bryce just sent you, Cole said, is criminal extortion. It changes the charge landscape of everything we're walking into Saturday. He paused. It helps. She looked at the notepad, looked at him. Okay, she said. She stood, took the notepad, started toward the door, stopped, turned back. He told me I wasn't ready for the main mat the first week I was here, she said. He said it in front of other people, that I didn't have what it took. She stopped. I kept coming back anyway. I thought if I worked hard enough. She didn't finish the sentence. Cole looked at her for a moment. You did, he said. She left. He sat in the empty mat for a while. Then he called Judith. She answered on the second ring. He's threatening the girl, Cole said. A 1-second pause. Define threatening. Blocked number. 2 in the morning. Comply with the narrative or the footage from Secession goes somewhere worse. A longer silence, Judith thinking. That is extortion, she said. Attempted witness, tampering on top of it. Yes, Cole, a pause. How are you holding up? He looked at the empty mat, the cones still in their lines from the evening class, the crash pads stacked along the far wall. The whiteboard with "you are not launched on it" in marker that had dried to permanent. Fine, he said. Not entirely true. Mostly true. Mostly true was what was available. Saturday, Judith said. Saturday, he confirmed. The information about Damon came from the Department of Defense. Judith had filed the FOIA request 7 weeks before Cole walked through Apex's front door. She had filed it the same week Gunny Tatum called Frank Navarro and sent him Cole's file. Because Tatum, before he called Frank, had called Judith. Had laid out what he knew about Apex, about Damon's public claims, about the pattern of conduct, about what he believed was going to happen if the right person was placed in the right position. Judith had listened. Then she'd filed 2 requests the same afternoon. One for Cole's service record, full release, pending Cole's authorization. One for any record of military service for one Damon James Holt. Cole's came back in 3 days. Judith held it. Damon's took longer. Government bureaucracy moved at its own pace, regardless of what was happening on the ground. She had filed early precisely because she knew it would take time and she needed the result before Saturday. It arrived on a Wednesday, 10 days before demo day. She did it at once. Then again. Then she called Cole. He picked up on the first ring. There is no record, she said, of any individual named Damon James Holt, having the date of birth and identifying information on file, having ever enlisted, served, deployed, or received any form of discharge from any branch of the United States Armed Forces. Cole was quiet. He has been publicly representing himself as a 3-deployment combat veteran for 5 years. 6 podcast appearances, 2 television interviews, 43 sponsored social media posts containing variations of the claim. Sponsorship agreements with veteran-affiliated brands totaling $410,000 entered into on the basis of that representation. The silence on Cole's end had a weight to it, and, Judith said, he waited. 3 years ago, a thread appeared on a veterans online forum. Specific questions about Damon's service record. Specific inconsistencies between claimed deployments and publicly verifiable information about the units he claimed affiliation with. She paused. The thread was removed after 72 hours. 7 days before it was removed, Damon Holt paid $3,200 to a firm that provides online reputation management services. The payment is documented in his business records, which were subpoenaed through the civil discovery process. Cole said nothing for a moment. This is federal, Judith said. Stolen Valor Act. 18 U.S.C., Section 704. On top of the civil and state matters we're already carrying, this is a federal referral on the day of the hearing. Okay. Are you okay? He was standing at the window of his apartment, the usual view. Tuesday evening light settling over Aurora in the way it settled at this hour. Unhurried. Indifferent. He called me weak, Cole said. Not factual, the way you note the weather. He said it in front of 8 women who came to that class because somebody in their lives had already taught them what it felt like to be called that. He stopped. He said it to them, while pretending to be something he has never been. I know, Judith said. Put it in the package, it's already in, gold tab. Your service record is blue as brew, his record is red. His fiction is gold. She hung up. Cole stood at the window for a while. Then he went to the kitchen. Made coffee he didn't particularly want. Stood at the counter and drank it because the act of making it and drinking it was something to do with his hands. The metal box was under the bed. He thought about it. Went and sat on the floor beside the bed frame. Didn't open it, just sat next to it. His back against the bed frame and his legs stretched out on the floor and his hand resting on the surface of the box. Cold metal, lock on the front, the weight of what was inside distributed in a way he knew by feel. Almost. He sat there for a while. Then he got up, went to bed, set his alarm, slept better than he had in 11 months. The party happened on a Saturday, Damon's 28th birthday, the upper deck of Apex. Open bar, running by 8. Music with opinions about its own volume. 50 guests in various states of enthusiasm about being there, most of them connected to Damon through the gym or through his social platforms, which for Damon were not meaningfully separate things. Cole finished his last class at 9. He was loading the equipment cart, stacking crash pads, running the end-of-session inventory that had become its own muscle memory over the past weeks. His phone buzzed. Carol. Texts.
I leave my wallet on the mat.
Green canvas. He looked, found it at the base of the sidewall where it had slid out of her bag. He texted her back. Got it. Front desk. He picked up the wallet, walked toward the front, past the stairwell, and heard them coming down. Not walking, descending. The rhythm of a group of men who had been drinking and had located something more interesting than where they were. Damon first, then Garrett Wynn. Then Bryce with his phone already horizontal in his hand. Then 4 men from the main mat class, all of them in the specific state of Saturday night that makes people loud and certain about things they haven't thought through. Garrett saw Cole first. Garrett's face did something that involved too many teeth and not enough consideration. Look at that, fancy announcing. Night class is still here. They spread without coordination. Instinctive geometry, loose. Not a wall, not a formation. Just bodies arranging themselves in the space slang of people who want you to understand that you are in the middle of something. Bryce pressed something on his phone. Cole tracked the gesture without looking directly at the screen. Live. Running. He noted the viewer count in the corner of Bryce's screen. 41,000. Same number as when he'd estimated it during the parking lot incident. Same audience, back for what they assumed was the next chapter of a story that Damon was writing. Damon stopped in front of him, loose in the particular way of someone feeling his drinks and performing the feeling for people watching. Hey, Cole? Easy. Like they had a history that didn't exist. Here's what we're going to do. You demo one technique, your choice. Show the people what the night class has been working on. He gestured around the assembled men. Then you go home. That's the whole deal. Cole said nothing. One of the men from the main mat started a slow clap. Another made a sound somewhere between encouragement and mockery. Garrett stepped forward, swung a fist toward Cole's face, pulled it back 6 inches short, grinning. Cole didn't move, didn't blink, which was information for the 41,000, for the men in the circle. That absence of flinch communicated something that a flinch would have obscured. Maybe he actually doesn't know anything, Garrett said, arms spread wide. Mock wonder. I always thought the quiet thing was strategy. Turns out it might just be nothing. Laughter in the circle. Coles stood in the middle of it. His heart rate was 62 beats per minute. He had tracked his own physiology in high-pressure situations long enough to know that number on sight. 62 was his baseline under threat, not suppressed panic, actual baseline. The product of years of conditioning that had rebuilt the body's relationship to danger from the ground up. He ran the assessment he had learned to run. Real threat or performance right now. Tonight, performance, drunk men, live camera. An audience of 41,000 who had tuned him for content. Nobody here was going to throw a real punch in front of Bryce's phone. The risk-reward calculation didn't support it even for people operating on Saturday Night Logic. This was a story Damon was telling in real time. And Cole was the prop. He waited. 1 minute, 2, 3, 4, standing in the loose circle while Damon performed. Garrett amplified and Bryce's camera captured all for the 41,000. Being circled and mocked and called nothing in a gym where he had spent 4 weeks teaching women to stop being afraid. He counted witnesses, camera position, body weight distribution of each of the 4 men he didn't know, distance to the exit, position of the stairwell, 4 minutes. Then Frank Navarro came down the stairs, not fast, moving the way a man moves when he has processed what he's looking at and is a half-second behind where he needed to be. He stopped on the 3rd step from the bottom, looked at the circle, looked at Bryce's phone, looked at the number in the corner of the screen. His face changed in a way that faces don't usually change voluntarily. Everybody upstairs. Flat quiet. The kind of voice that doesn't need to be loud. Right now, the circle dissolved, not quickly, but it went. Bodies moving toward the stairwell one by one with varying degrees of dawning comprehension depending on how much alcohol was mediating their access to it. Garrett was the last one moving. He looked back at Cole once on his way to the stairs. The grin was gone. In its place was something smaller and less comfortable. Cole watched him go. Then he walked out of the building, parked in the far corner of the lot, got in, both hands on the wheel. The August night outside the windshield, doing its quiet thing. He breathed, in, out, 3 times. Then he picked up his starred contact. The number claim I afford did sort. It's time ring, Cole said. Judith was quiet for 1 beat. Tell me, he told her. 5 minutes precise the circle. Bryce's phone. 41,000 viewers. 4 minutes in the middle of it. Frank coming down the stairs. Judith listened without interrupting. When he finished, she ceased. That you held. Yes. The live stream is logged and archived. 41,000 documented witnesses to the conduct. A pause. Cole, whatever they tried to do after Saturday, that archive exists. That number exists. You can't make 41,000 people forget what they watched. He hadn't thought about it in those terms. Don't initiate anything, she said. Don't react to anything between now and Saturday. Wear the camera every day. A pause, and Cole, I need you to know something. What? I filed the FOIA on Damon's service records 7 weeks ago. The response came in this morning. She let that land for a second. There is no record, no enlistment, no service, no discharge, nothing. The parking lot was quiet around him. He called me weak, Cole said, same as before, still factual, in front of people who came there because they already knew what being called that felt like. He said it while pretending to be something he has never been. I know, Judith said. Is the package ready? Red tab for the lies, pre-truth, gold tab for your record. She paused. Every tab is full. Saturday, he said. Today, she said. And Cole, bring the medal. He was quiet. Not to show anyone, she said. Not yet. Just carry it. He looked out through the windshield at the second-floor windows of Apex. Light still on. The party still going. Okay, he said. He hung up, sat in the car for 3 more minutes, drove home, went straight to the bedroom, got down on one knee beside the bed, reached under it, pulled the metal box, set it on the mattress, looked at it for a moment, the lock, the surface, the face-down position it had held since the day he carried it in from the truck. He reached into his pocket for the key. Unlocked it, opened it. Inside, a small American flag folded into a triangle, the kind of fold that takes training to do correctly and stays correct once it's done. A photograph. 3 men in a Nevada field with smoke visible in the distance behind them, all 3 facing the camera, all 3 alive and will continue to be. And the soldier's medal in its case, face down, where it had been since he came home. He picked it up, turned it over, looked at the front of it for the first time in 11 months. Then he set it on the bedside table, face up, facing the room, left the box open, went to the kitchen, made coffee he actually wanted this time, sat at his 1-chair table, and waited for Saturday to come. Saturday came in gray, the kind of gray that sits on a Colorado August morning like it hasn't decided yet what it wants to be. Low clouds, flat light. The air still holding the cool from the night before in the way August air sometimes does before it remembers what month it is. Cole was up at 5. Not because his alarm went off, but because his body had stopped negotiating. He lay there for 40 seconds, looking at the ceiling at the water stain above the left corner he had memorized so completely he could have described it to a stranger in the dark. Then he swung his legs over the side and sat with his hands on his knees in the half-dark of a Saturday that had been a long time coming. The soldier's medal was on the bedside table, face up, where he'd left it 2 nights ago when he finally opened the box and turned it over. He looked at it for a moment, didn't touch it, just let it be there in the gray morning light, occupying its space the way it was always supposed to occupy it and hadn't been permitted to until now. Then he stood up, made coffee, stood at the window while it brewed and watched Aurora begin its Saturday, slow, the city practicing its weekend pace. A man bang with his hands his pockets going nowhere particular, a woman in scrubs getting into a car that needed a new muffler. The ordinary machinery of people who had no idea what was about to happen inside a building on Colf Avenue and had no reason to. He drank the coffee at the 1-chair table. Thought about Carol, about Sarah, about the 6 other women who came to the side met twice a week and practiced the mechanics of leaving. About Owen and his black notebook and 18 months of writing things down in a drawer, because somebody needed to remember even if that somebody was only him. He thought about Gunny Ray Tatum, who was in a hotel 2 miles away and had driven 14 hours to be there, because some things you don't trust to a flight. He thought about Judith, who was almost certainly already awake. who was probably at her kitchen table with the color-coded folders open and the timeline laid out in front of her the way it had been laid out for weeks. He finished the coffee, showered, dressed in the gray suit he'd bought Wednesday afternoon from a store on Broadway that had a sale rack in the back. Plain Steele's watch. Scenes, no insignias, and his history visible on the outside. Just a man in a suit with a manila envelope and a small device clipped under his lapel that had been running for 10 days and had recorded everything it was going to need to record. He picked up the soldier's medal from the bedside table, held it in his palm, felt the weight of it, never as heavy as it looked, never as light as it should have been. He put it in his jacket pocket, picked up his keys, walked out. Apex Combat Academy looked different with 200 people in it. Not different in the way of improvement. Different in the way a familiar space looks when something is about to happen inside it that the space never was designed to contain. Cole arrived at 8:15. 45 minutes before the official start. The parking lot was already filling, sponsor vehicles with company logos on the rear windows. A press van from a local sports outlet. 3 cars he recognized from the regular student roster. He went in through the side entrance. Judith was already there. Third row of the spectators that ran along the elevated platform above the main mat, briefcase at her feet, tablet on her knee displaying the feed from Cole's body camera, which she had tested remotely at 7 that morning. She dressed for every hearing. Dark blazer, hair back. The stillness of a woman completed her preparation and is now simply present for the sequence to begin. She looked up when Cole came through the door, held his gaze for one moment, nodded once. He nodded back. Sarah Finch was beside her. 19 years old, sling finally off after 10 days, the shoulder still held with the careful awareness of something that remembered what had happened to it. Her hands were in her lap. She was looking at the main mat below with an expression that required more words than one to describe. Relief was part of it. Fear was part of it. The particular quality of someone who has agreed to be present at something they aren't certain they can survive being present at and has shown up anyway. Carol was 2 seats down from Sarah, chin up, long sleeves, same as always, but something in her posture had changed over 4 weeks. Something had straightened that had been tilted for a long time. Behind them, the 6 other women from the night class had arranged themselves across the row with the quiet coordination of people who had decided to be somewhere together without needing to discuss it. They had texted each other. Cole hadn't asked them to. They had just come. Owen Staffs stood against the far wall with his arms at his sides, not looking at anyone, not performing anything, just present, which was its own statement, given everything he had put in that black notebook and everything he had agreed to say. And in the 7th row from the front, near the aisle, Gunny Ray Tatum sat with his jacket folded over his knees. The Marine Corps pin was visible on the lapel. He looked at Cole when Cole came in and held the look with the same 3-second steadiness he had used through the side mat door on Thursday. Cole walked to his seat at the far end of the 3rd row, set the manila envelope on his knee, folded his hands, waited. The main mat filled in 20 minutes. Damon's crowd has specific texture. Young, social media fluent. The kind of people who arrived at events already composing the posters about attending. Phones everywhere. The elevated platform was standing room along the back by 8:45. Damon arrived on the main mat at 8:58. Fresh black gi with sponsor logos on every panel. He moved through the space with the owned ease of a man who had never had a reason to doubt that a room was his, greeting people by name, touching shoulders. The practiced social fluency of someone who had spent years making other people feel seen, because that feeling kept them paying $800 a month. Bryce was already moving through the space with his camera. Live counter running in the corner of his screen. Cole could see it from the 3rd row, 41,000. Same number that had watched the parking lot circle. Back for the next episode of a story they thought they knew the ending to. Garrett Wynn sat in the front row in a tracksuit that announced its own price. Knee brace visible below the hem of the pants. He wore it with the careful consistency of someone who needed to remember which leg's supposed to be the damaged one to be. Frank Navarro was at the edge of the elevated platform. Arms crossed, the look of a man watching something build toward a conclusion he hasn't decided how to feel about yet. Damon picked up the microphone at 9:03. before we get into the main demonstrations today. His voice filled the room with no visible effort. Practiced. Clean. The voice of a man comfortable taking up Sonic's space. Special start to the morning. We've got a new addition to the Apex team. Our night class instructor, Cole. He gestured toward the third row. Cole, come on down. Show us what the night class has been building. Cole did not move. A murmur ran through the crowd. Not quite laughter, not quite confusion. Something's existed in the space between them. Damon smiled. Patient. Generous. Performing patience for 200 people. Come on, man. One technique, charity round. Show the room what you've got. Cole looked at him. No thank you. His voice carried its roughness across the room. Scraped the edges. Hit the wall, calls clear. The murmurs changed character. Damon's smile stayed exactly where it was, but something behind the smile made an adjustment. Something that had been waiting for this specific response, because this specific response was what the plan required. He stepped off the mat platform, walked across the main floor, stopped 2 feet from the third row, 2 feet from Cole. I wasn't asking. His voice dropped, not for the room, now for the 6 inches of air between them. His hand came out, fast, deliberate, closed around Cole's right wrist, the burned one. The one with the scar running from his wrist to the inner crease of his elbow. The grip was hard and designed to communicate something specific about who held authority in this building, and always had. He pulled. 2 steps. Cole was on the main mat, in front of 200 people. 3 camera tripods, Bryce's live phone, the elevated platform full of people with their own devices raised. At second 14 of the body camera recording, the footage would show Damon Holt's hand extend, close around Cole's right wrist, and pull him forward. That was the moment. That specific moment was when the law gave Cole everything he needed. 50 seconds, the first takedown. Cole's hips rotated. Not dramatically. 3 inches, maybe 4. The kind of movement that looks like almost nothing until you understand the mechanical principle behind it, and then it looks like everything. His left foot moved behind Damon's right ankle. The grip on Cole's wrist became a lever. The oldest grappling. The thing your opponent is holding is the thing that moves them. Damon went down, back first. Hard. His head bounced once off the mat, and the sound it made traveled up to the roof and came back down, sharp and dense and undeniable. A woman in the second row made a sound. A child in the back started crying. 200 people did the thing crowds do when something real happens in front of them. They went very quiet, very fast. 3 seconds. Bryce came in from the left with his phone in one hand and his other fist drawing back. The body language of someone who had made a heroic decision without thinking past the decision to what came after it. Cole went under him, not sideways, straight down and through. 2 steps that placed him behind Bryce before Bryce's swing had completed its arc through empty air. Cole's right arm came around, found the position under Bryce's chin, with the certainty of a hand that had done this enough times to find it the way you find a light switch in a familiar room in the dark. Rear naked choke. Textbook. Clean. 6 seconds. Bryce's hands he went up, found no purchase. His phone dropped, clattered across the mat, kept recording. Lens pointed straight up at the ceiling lights and Bryce's face, which was doing what faces do under this particular kind of pressure. 41,000 people had an unobstructed view of all of it. Both of Bryce's hands went to the mat, slapping, fast. The signal that means the same thing in every language. Cole released immediately. Bryce folded forward, coughing. The phone spun to a rest 3 feet away, still running, still counting its 41,000 in the corner of the frame. 11 seconds total. Garrett came from the right. He was not a small man, and he was not a slow man, and he had been training at $800 a month for 2 years. He came with a kick aimed at Cole's head, high, round, full commitment behind it. Cole caught it, air unhurried. The way you catch something you were already watching come. He stepped space, the kick had vacated. His hands controlled the leg. He twisted, dropped his weight, knee bar, slow, controlled, mechanical. He found the position and stopped there. Did not push further, just held it. Waiting. Garrett made a sound, the kind of sound that bypasses everything learned and goes straight to animal, high and sharp and completely honest. His free hand found the mat. 1, 2, 3, 4. Cole released the moment the 4th tap landed. Not a moment after. The moment of. Garrett curled around himself. The expensive tracksuit was not built for this. His face was not built for this. The Nemesis that had been decorative was now being used for its original purpose, which it was 3 years too late to serve. 23 seconds, Damon was back on his feet. His face was the color faces go when the blood makes decisions under pressure. His gi was twisted around his ribs. His certainty was still operational, but working very hard now. Requiring maintenance, he came in with everything he had left. A roundhouse, full rotation. Every ounce of 5 years of constructed identity behind it. Every podcast appearance. Every sponsored post. Every claim made and repeated until it felt like truth. All of it in the swing. Cole moved inside it. Damon's arm went where it was going. Cole was somewhere else. He caught the wrist at its apex, rotated his hips, sat into the Kimura with the quiet efficiency of something that required no particular emotional investment to execute correctly. Since shoulder moved through its range, found the boundaries, stopped. I tap, high, stripped of everything that had been coating it for 5 years. I tap, 3 times, each one louder than the one before. The camera on the upper platform 12 meters away and elevated would pick up all 3 without difficulty. Cole stepped back, 52 seconds from first movement to final tap, 3 men on the mat. One making the sounds of someone whose Saturday had not gone where they expected. One curled around a knee that contained a story from 2023 that was about to become very difficult to maintain. One crying into the sleeve of a gi with his own logo embroidered on the chest. And Cole, standing, not breathing hard, hands loose at his sides, the body camera under his lapel getting everything. Getting Damon's face and Bryce's phone, still running on the mat and Garrett's tracksuit and the sound of the room going through its various stages of processing what it had just watched. He looked toward the 3rd row, found Carol, chin up, hands flat on her knees, eyes bright in a way that had nothing to do with sadness and everything to do with something she had needed to see for a long time. Found Sarah at the rail of the elevated platform, good hand pressed to her mouth, watching the man who had dislocated her shoulder on purpose and laughed about it, breathing into the mat below. He gave Sarah one small nod. Then he stepped off the main mat, picked up his equipment bag from the side mat where he had left it before the demonstration he had intended to give. Started setting up cones for the 3 o'clock class. 4 seconds of silence in Apex Combat Academy. Then the room came apart at the seams. It moved the way fire moves when it finds something to catch on. By 9 p.m., the clip was on 11 platforms, 8 million views by midnight. By Sunday morning, the hashtag had trended in 12 states. A journalist in Denver had filed a piece with a headline containing the words mystery instructor and 52 seconds and 3 black belts. Nobody knew Cole's name yet. Nobody knew his file. And then Sunday arrived, and the story went somewhere nobody in Damon's camp had planned for it to go. Damon's attorney filed by 9 a.m. Sunday morning. Civil suit, 3 criminal complaints. The complaint described Cole as an employee with a documented history of violent behavior who had attacked 3 men without provocation in a public setting in front of 200 witnesses. 3 affidavits. Damon's, Bryce's, Garrett's. All 3 describing the same event from the same direction with the same conclusion. Unprovoked, unprofessional, dangerous. By 10:30, Bryce's channel had a new cut of the footage, 22 seconds, starting at the moment Cole's hip rotated, ending with Damon's 3 taps and Cole standing over him. The moment at second 14, the hand that reached across and grabbed Cole's wrist and pulled was gone. Caption, Apex Assault, instructor attacks coaches on camera. Charges pending. 14 million views in 6 hours. Garrett's MRI appeared on his social media account Sunday afternoon alongside a fundraising link. The goal was $50,000. It crossed that number before sundown. The comments were full of people who believed him. By Sunday evening, the internet had rendered its judgment. The hashtag shifted. Cable television got hold of it Monday morning. A host on a morning program used the phrase untreated aggression disorder on live television while the edited clip played behind him on loop. Another called it a liability crisis for community gyms. Frank called Cole at 8:14 Monday morning. I have to suspend you pending investigation. A pause long enough to contain everything Frank wasn't saying. The board met at 7. I tried. I'm sorry, Cole. I understand. I'll call each of them myself. He hung up. Set the kitchen table. looked at the stack of unopened VA correspondence on the counter, looked at the metal box still open on the floor beside the bed where he'd left it Friday night after taking the metal out. Then he picked up his phone, called Carol. She answered on the second ring. He told her the class was paused, not canceled, paused. For a moment. Then she said, "You're not leaving us." Not a question, not a plea. A statement of what she had decided was true. "No," he said. "I'm not leaving." She cried for about 15 seconds. Quietly. Then she said, "Okay," and hung up. He called the others 1-1. 6 calls, 6 variations of the same conversation. "The class is paused. I am not leaving. This is not over." One of the women, a home invasion survivor named Diane, who had been coming since the second week, asked if he was safe at home. He said yes. He stared at the wall for a while after he hung up with her. Then Judith called. "Don't read anything online," she said before he could say hello. "Don't respond to anything. Don't open a news app. Don't talk to journalists. There's going to be a reporter at your door within 48 hours. Don't answer it." All right. The DA's office filed this morning. 3 misdemeanor counts. 3rd-degree assault, harassment, reckless sex endangerment. A pause. Maximum exposure on all 3 is 18 months. That's the number they're going to put in front of press. They want you scared. They want you making decisions from fear. He looked at the ceiling. 18 months. A number. He held it and looked at it and set it down. "I'm not scared," he said. "I know you're not, but I need you to have already heard that number before you see it in a headline, which you will." A pause. "Cole, are we clear on Thursday?" "Yes, yes. 9 a.m., Aurora District Court, Department 3. She paused. "And Cole, I need you to hear something. Go ahead." I have the original live stream from Bryce's phone, unedited, with metadata timestamps. The wrist grab is at second 14 and it is unambiguous. She said each word with its own weight. I have the MRI file metadata showing Garrett's knee injury is from November 2023. I have the text message Bryce sent to Garrett the night of Dibino Day telling him to sell the knee story and make the MRI look recent. I have Owen's notebook with 18 months of documented incidents. I have Sarah's extortion message. I have the Department of Defense FOIA response on the SIM service record. She's stopped, and I have your file. Full release. Your authorization came in Thursday. The Army processed it Friday. Another pause, and I have Gunny Tatum. Silence on both ends. "We are more than ready," she said. He exhaled, one breath. "Slowsday," he said. "Thursday," she said. "Bring the medal." Aurora District Court, Department 3, Thursday, 8:47. In the morning, Cole walked through the metal detector in the gray suit, steel watch, stealthy, manila envelope under his left arm. The soldier's medal in his right jacket pocket, where it had been since he put it there Saturday morning and had not moved it since. The courtroom was full, press along the back row, sponsor representatives near the aisle, and on the right side of the gallery, 6 rows of people who had decided to be there. Carol in the 3rd row, long sleeves, chin up. Beside her, Sarah Finch, with the shoulder finally healed enough to hold itself without the careful guarding she'd been carrying for 2 weeks. Owen sat at the end of the row with his hands on his knees and his back straight. The 6 other night class women filled the seats around them. They had arranged themselves without being coordinated. They had simply come. 2 men sat in the 5th row, both of them civilians now. Both of them had been in a Nevada field 4 years ago. One of them had a prosthetic right leg that he had never once, in Cole's hearing, described as the burden. And in the 7th row, near the aisle, Gunny Ray Tatum sat in a suit that understood the occasion. The Marine Corps pin was on the lapel today, not hidden under the fold. On the lapel, Damon, Bryce, and Garrett sat at the plaintiff's table in 2,000 suits. Damon's smile was in place, managed. The smile of a man who has told a story enough times that he believes the story will hold because it has held before. Garrett's knees was visible beneath the table. He wore it with the particular care of someone who needs to remember which leg. Bryce was looking at the table in front of him. He had not raised his eyes since Cole walked in. Judge Patricia Okafor called the court to order at 9 exactly. Jusith stood. "Your Honor, the prosecution's case rests on 3 claims. First, that my client attacked the plaintiffs without provocation. Second, that one plaintiff sustained a torn ACL during the incident. Third, that my client has a documented history of violent behavior." She paused, looked at the courtroom without rushing. "Each of these 3 claims is false. I will demonstrate that this morning." Judge Okafor nodded.
Proceed. Exhibit. The original live stream played on the courtroom monitor.
Uncut. Bryce's phone. Metadata timestamps visible in the lower left corner. The room watched 2 minutes of setup footage. Damon calling Cole down. Cole declining. Damon walking across the floor. And at second 14, the room watched Damon Holt's hand reach across, close around Cole's right wrist, and pull. The pull was not ambiguous, but was not open to interpretation. It was a hand closing and a body moving because the hand commanded it to. Damon's attorney leaned toward him. Something was said. Damon's smile did a small amount of structural adjustment. Exhibit B. The recovered text messages appeared on the monitor. Bryce Callum's number in the header. Garrett Wynn's number in the recipient field. Timestamp. 11:47 p.m. on the night of demo day. Bro, we have to sell the knee thing or we're cooked. Makes sure the MRI looks recent. Garrett looked at the table. Bryce had still not looked up. Exhibit C. Garrett's MRI appeared beside its original file metadata. Side by side on the split monitor, the scan Garrett had filed as evidence of a demo day injury. The file information in the column beside it. Wink knee 2023. DSIM. Date of scan. November 9, 2023. 2 years and 7 months for demo day. A reporter in the second row said something under her breath that wasn't intended for the record. Garrett's attorney rose to request a recess. Judge Okafor denied it without looking up from her notes. Exhibit D. Judith turned to face the plaintiff's table. She stood there for a moment without speaking. Let the room arrange itself around the silence. Damon Holt has represented himself publicly as a 3-deployment combat veteran for 5 years. He has appeared on 6 podcasts, 2 television interviews, and 43 sponsored social media posts containing this claim. He has entered into sponsorship agreements with veteran-affiliated brands totaling $410,000 on the basis of this representation. She raised a folder. This is the official response from the Department of Defense pursuant to a Freedom of Information Act request. The response states that there is no record of any individual named Damon James Holt matching the identifying information on file, having ever enlisted, served, deployed, or received any form of discharge from any branch of the United States Armed Forces. She lowered the folder. In addition, 3 years prior to this incident, an online forum thread raised specific questions about Mr. Holt's claims service record. That thread was removed after 72 hours. 7 days before its removal, Mr. Holt paid $3,200 to an online reputation management firm. The payment is documented in his business records, subpoenaed through civil discovery. She paused. This constitutes multiple violations of the Stolen Valor Act, 18 U.S.C. Section 704. The matter will be referred to the United States Attorney's Office at the close of this hearing. The room was completely quiet, not the quiet of uncertainty. The quiet of people who have just heard something land and are processing the weight of it. Damon's face had passed through its available colors and arrived somewhere outside the normal range. Judith called her first witness. Owen Staffs walked to the stand. 36. The posture of a man who has made a decision and is living in the immediate aftermath of it before he knows what the aftermath costs. Mr. Staffs. In the 3 weeks prior to the demo day incident, how many times did you personally hear Mr. Holt use the phrase "too weak" in reference to my client? Owen looked at the table in front of him for a moment. 7 times, he said. How would you characterize Mr. Holt's conduct toward Mr. Riker during that period? Owen took a breath, long, measured. It was harassment, he said. It was racial in character. It was deliberate, and it was repeated. A pause, and everyone in that building saw it quiet because Mr. Holt controlled the class schedule. If he decided your class wasn't needed anymore, it wasn't needed, and your income went with it. He ceased, looked at Damon directly for the first time since sitting down. I've been afraid to say something for 4 years. I kept a record instead. Another pause. The room didn't make a sound. Judith called her second witness. Gunny rated him stood from the 7th row. He moved to the stand the way he moved everywhere. Economy of motion, nothing performed. He settled into the seat and looked at the courtroom the way someone looks at a space they have assessed and found to be manageable. State your name and service record for the court. Gunnery Sergeant Ray Tatum, United States Marine Corps, retired, 28 years of service. From 13-13-18, I served as senior cadre instructor at the Marine Raider Combative Selection Course at Camp Lejeune. He paused. Cole Riker was my colleague. He trained the instructors who trained the raiders. He holds the highest combative certification available to a Marine. MC Map Black Belt, 6th degree. He looked at the room. He is one of the 3 most capable hand combatants I have stood beside in uniform. A reporter in the back was already on her phone. On April 14, 2019, during a live-fire training exercise in the Nevada desert, Mr. Riker's convoy encountered an ordnance device during a scenario that was supposed to be controlled and was not. The lead vehicle caught fire. 2 men did not survive. 3 others were trapped inside when the fire reached the fuel system. Gunny's voice didn't change pitch, it stayed level. That was what made it land the way it did. Mr. Riker had already sustained shrapnel damage to his vocal cords and second-degree burns on his right forearm. With his own clothing on fire, he went back into the vehicle. Twice. He pulled 3 men out. 2 of them are alive today. A pause that the room held with him. One of them is sitting in the 5th row of this courtroom. The man in the 5th row, early 30s, prosthetic right leg, raised his hand. Without drama. The courtroom did not make a sound. Not one. Cole Riker was awarded the Soldier's Medal and the Purple Heart by direct recommendation of his commanding officer. Gunny continued. The Soldier's Medal citation reads, "For distinguished heroism not involving actual conflict with an enemy, at the risk of his own life above and beyond the call of duty." The complete citation and service record are before the court pursuant to full authorized release. He placed the documents on the edge of the stand for the bailiff. I have certified copies. The bailiff took them to Judge Okafor. She read citation, then she read it aloud, every word. For distinguished heroism not involving actual conflict with an enemy, at the risk of his own life above and beyond the call of duty. Staff Sergeant Cole R. Riker, United States Army. The room held its breath for the entire reading. When she finished, the silence lasted for 3 full seconds. Damon Holt was crying. Not loudly, the quiet kind. The kind that happens when the structure of something has been removed and what's left underneath doesn't know its own shape without it. Bryce had not looked up from the table in front of him in 7 minutes. Garrett was looking at his shoes with the focused attention of a man who has found the only safe place to look in the room. Judith turned to Cole. Your Honor, with the court's permission, my client would like to make a brief statement. Judge Okafor looked at Cole. Mr. Riker, you may address the court. Cole stood. He walked to the witness stand. He did not bring the manila envelope. He did not take the soldier's medal from his pocket. He stood at the front of the stand with his hands at his sides and his damaged voice ready, and 200 people watching, and a camera recording everything for a courtroom record that would become part of a federal referral by close of business. He looked at Damon, not with anger, not with satisfaction, with something that had been present in him for 4 weeks and had not been permitted to become any of the things it could have become. Something he had carried at 62 beats per minute through parking lots, circles, and protein bar mornings, and 30 seconds of white knuckles on a crash pad. He held Damon's gaze for one long moment. Then he looked at Sarah, who was standing at the gallery rail with her healed shoulder no longer held with that careful guarding, whose 19-year-old face was doing the thing faces do when something you needed to happen has finally happened, and you didn't know until this moment how much you needed it. Then he looked at Judge Okafor. 3 words. I chose restraint, that was all he said. Judge Okafor held his gaze for a moment after he finished. She opened her file folder, then she closed it. All charges against Cole Riker are dismissed with prejudice. Her voice placed each word with intention. Mr. Holt, Mr. Callum, and Mr. Wynn will be remanded for evidentiary review. The matter of stolen valor charges and conspiracy to commit perjury will be referred to the United States Attorney's Office by cloaks of business today. The gavel came down. Cole walked out of the courtroom. Behind him, 3 men in expensive suits sat at a table that had become the full visible evidence of everything they had built and said and done, available now for anyone to see, not going anywhere. The consequences arrived in sequence, not all at once, the way things go when they go. Within 72 hours, the Attorney's Office filed federal charges against Damon Holt under the Stolen Valor Act. 2 state charges for perjury were added the same afternoon. A conspiracy to defraud charge followed the next morning. His attorney advised against fighting any of it. The evidence made the advice easy to give. Every sponsorship contract terminated within 7 days. The veteran-affiliated brand sent letters that used the word misrepresentation in the precise way that precedes legal action. The Credentialing Federation that had certified his black belt instructor status revoked the certification and issued a public statement that used more specific language than misrepresentation. Damon pleaded guilty in exchange for 18 months of supervised release, mandatory restitution of the full $410,000 to the brands that had paid it, and a permanent ban from holding any martial arts instructor certification in the United States. He went to work in a distribution warehouse in Denver. Early shifts, the kind of work that asks only that you show up and move things from one place to another. He showed up. Bryce Callum cooperated fully with prosecutors. 12 months of probation, 400 hours of community service. His attorney requested placement flexibility, and the prosecution countered with a specific recommendation, which the court accepted: media literacy instruction for at-risk youth at a community center in Aurora, every Tuesday and Thursday evening for the duration of his service requirement. Every Tuesday and Thursday, he stood in front of teenagers whose lives contained exactly the kind of vulnerability he had once filmed and captioned and posted for an audience. The program coordinator told him after his third session that the kids could tell the difference between someone performing engagement and someone actually trying. He thought about that on the drive home for a long time. Garrett Wynn's family arranged a settlement. The number had 7 digits. The transfer cleared on a Tuesday, routed through Judith firm with the appropriate legal arrangements in place to address the tax implications of a transaction at this scale. The agreement included a non-disclosure provision on Garrett's behalf and a restriction on any martial arts instruction or affiliation in Colorado and the 4 surrounding states for 10 years. Garrett moved to Florida the following week. He was not heard from again in any of the contexts that had previously made him visible. Frank Navarro held a press conference on a Friday afternoon when it was raining. He stood outside Apex at a small podium with no prepared text and said what he had decided to say, which was this: "I built this gym for 31 years. I let it become something I'm ashamed of, not because I didn't see it. I saw it. I told myself the things express themselves when they see something and choose to keep seeing it differently. I failed Cole Riker. I failed Sarah Finch. I failed every person who came through those doors expecting to find something safe and found instead that safety in this building was conditional on their ability to be useful to someone else's ego." He stopped. "I'm selling the gym. I'm leaving the industry. And I am asking Cole Riker to accept an apology that no words of mine are sufficient to make right." He sold Ace 3 weeks later. He sold it to Cole for $1 with the appropriate legal instruments in place. Cole signed the paperwork in Judith's office on a Wednesday afternoon. He held the pen for a moment before signing, looked at the number printed on the line, $1. The price of something that had cost other people more than they should have paid. He signed. The sign above the front door came down on a Thursday morning. The new one went up that Saturday. 3 words. Plain white letters on a dark background. Cole stood on the sidewalk and looked at it for a moment. A woman with a roll shirt slowed down to read the letters, kept walking. The ordinary world moving past something that had changed. Then Cole went inside and started arranging the mats. Damesman's promotional images came down from the columns. Everyone. Cole put them in the recycling bin in the alley with the same steady pace he applied to everything that needed doing. No ceremony. They just came down. The stay empty for a while. Just clean columns, which turned out to be its own kind of statement. Several students commented on it in the first week. Cole didn't explain. They stopped asking. The pricing structure changed entirely. Every class was free for women veterans, free for domestic violence survivors, free for any woman who came in with a referral from a shelter, a VA caseworker, or a court-appointed victim's advocate. The settlement from Garrett covered operating costs for 3 years. Judith had run the numbers twice and confirmed it. After 3 years, Cole would figure out the next part. He had always been good at working with what was available. Sarah Finch became his first assistant instructor. 6 months after Demo Day, the shoulder was fully healed, not just cleared on paper. Functionally, genuinely, completely healed. She taught beginner grappling on Saturday mornings to a class that grew from 7 to 15 over the first 2 months. Half of them cried at least once during their first session. All of them came back the following Saturday. Sarah had a quality that Cole had not expected to find, and then recognized immediately when he saw it. She remembered what it felt like to not know. She didn't perform patience. She had it because she had needed it from someone else not long ago and understood what it was worth. Carol Emmons taught the Introduction to Fear class on Wednesday evenings. She had named it herself. The class addressed the physiological reality of the fear response, what the body does before the mind catches up. What that means, what can be done with it once you understand it. She taught in long sleeves, same as always, and she taught with the authority of someone who had lived the material. Owen's staffs taught ground recovery on Tuesday mornings. He had stayed. Cole had asked him, and Owen had said yes before the sentence was complete. The night class became the day class. The day class became a day. Months after the verdict, the Colorado State Legislature introduced House Bill 294. In the wholesale outside the chamber and in gym locker rooms across the state, and in the comment sections of the articles about what had happened at Apex, it was referred to informally as the Cole Rule. The bill required every certified martial arts instructor in Colorado to undergo annual background checks, mandatory reporting of student injuries to an independent body, and public disclosure of any prior conduct complaints. It passed both chambers. The vote was bipartisan. The margin was not close. The governor signs on a Tuesday morning at Silent Mat, a small podium borrowed from a community center 3 blocks away. Cole stood 2 feet behind him to the left. He did not speak. He was not asked to speak. He was there as the reason the thing existed and as witness to it becoming law. The pen scratched, the cameras flashed. New language written into the record of what this state required of people who were trusted with other people's safety. Cole watched it happen, said nothing, didn't need to. 1 year later, Silent Mat opened at 6 in the morning. The lights came up slowly. Not a flood, an arrival. The mats were blue and clean, and worn in exactly the right places, which were the places people had fallen, and gotten back up, which were the only places that mattered. No posters on the columns. 1 photograph on the wall above front tracks. Small frame, eye level. 3 men in a Nevada field with smoke visible in the background behind them. All 3 looking at the camera, all 3 alive and will continue to be. Tuesday morning, Cole taught a beginner class of 12 women. 5 were veterans. 3 were domestic violence survivors. 2 were mothers whose adult daughters had been assaulted, and who had decided that learning to protect themselves was the closest available substitute for going back and protecting daughters they hadn't been able to protect when it mattered. 1 was a federal prosecutor who came on her lunch break twice a week with the focused intensity she brought to everything and was making faster progress than she was willing to admit. The class ran 60 minutes. Cole's voice was stronger than it had been a year ago. The damage to the vocal cords was still there. It would always be there. But he had built the muscle around it, session by session, breath by breath, until the words came out the way he intended them to come out. Rough at the edges. Clear in the middle. After class, 11 of the 12 gathered their things and said the small things people say to each other at each of shared effort. Then they left. 1 stayed. Tessa Crane was 22 years old, and she had been coming to Silent Mat for 3 weeks. She had separated from the Army 8 months ago. She came on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and she worked hard and didn't talk much about herself, which Cole recognized as one kind of carrying and respected accordingly without comment. She stayed after class and started rolling up the mats. Nobody had asked her to. She just started. Cole was returning the training pads to their positions on the equipment rack. The room was settling into the particular warmth that spaces hold for a little while after people have been working in them. Tessa was rolling the 3rd mat when she stopped. She was looking at Cole's right arm. His sleeve had ridden up. 3 inches of scar visible above the wrist. The burned tissue catching the morning light the way it always caught light. Hard and ridged and permanent, running up the inner forearm toward the elbow. She looked at it for a moment. Then looked up. Coach. The pause of someone who's been holding a question for 3 weeks and is deciding whether today is the day. Where'd you get the scar? Cole set down the pad he was holding. He raised his right hand to his chest, made one small, clean gesture. The sign for fire in American Sign Language. The first word he had taught himself to sign in the months after for Nevada, when speaking had still been a calculation, when the words needed to be rationed, and the hands had to carry what the voice couldn't yet offer. He held the sign for a moment, then lowered his hand. Looked at Tessa, used his voice, rough at the edges, clear in the middle. Fire, he said, and brotherhood. Tessa looked at him for a moment, nodded, once, slow, the nod of someone who understands that the answer is complete, that it contains what it contains, and doesn't need to be made larger than it is. She didn't ask anything else. She sat down on the mat beside him, not across from him. Besides, same blue surface, same morning light coming through the high windows at the angle it came through, at this hour, low and flat and without opinion. They rolled the mats together, in silence. The kind of silence that isn't empty. The kind that has been earned by the people cited over a long enough time that it no longer requires explanation or maintenance. Outside, Aurora was doing its Tuesday morning. Cars and footsteps. The ordinary movement of a city that had no particular reason to know what was happening inside a building on Colfax with 3 words above the door and no reason to need to. In the small office off the main floor, on a shelf above the desk, 2 objects beside each other. A soldier's medal, not face down. Facing outward the way something faces outward when it has stopped needing to be hidden from the room, and a body camera, retired. The lens covered with a small piece of black tape, battery long removed. Its work finished, and its record preserved in the discovery files of a federal case and a civil settlement, and a state law that bore Cole's name informally, and would continue to require better things of people who were trusted with other people's safety. 2 tools, one for surviving, one for proving. Both still present, both still show service in the way that things remain in service when they have done what they were made for, and the doing of it changed something that would not have changed otherwise. The mats were rolled, the morning light held. The doors would open again tomorrow at 6.